stop, Dave. I'm afraid.
What don't they vote?
Why don't you play us something, baby?
Start? I don't think so, good.
You can practically see it from here. What?
Hello? Where is everybody? Chadley? Buck? What's going on here? Hello? It's Sunday. Where is everybody? Oh, hey, Podcast Bob. What's up? Why are you yelling? Well, it's Sunday. We got to record the podcast. No, you don't understand, Podcast Spot. The podcast's over. Chadley's left the show. No. Fuck Chadley. We've scheduled the movies. We've scheduled the episode. You're here. I'm here. I've got everything set up. We're gonna do a podcast. I don't think that's gonna happen, Podcast Spot. I don't want to. I don't want to just talk into this microphone by myself. That doesn't make sense. Logistically, even. Nothing about it makes sense. Buck, you better do this. I'm gonna fucking make sure you don't see the next sunrise. All right, Podcast Ball, that's extremely violent. Why don't we play the transition music and we'll get into the show here. Welcome to the Movie Epidemic Podcast. I'm your host, Buck Hollywood LeDuc. Not joined by anyone today. This is a solo bolo, baby. One of many, I suppose. One of many going forward because Chadley is sadly no longer with us. I didn't want to just stop the show, so let's see if I can do it solo. I don't know. I don't know if I can. This is going to be a test episode, and if I like it, maybe I'll do more of them. But for now, let's just see how this plays out. All right, I'm going to pass it over now to the ghost of Wolfman Jack, as he has a new radio show called The Dead Chadley Hour, I think, or something like that. But you guys can listen to this recording from the ghost of Wolfman Jack. This is so fucking stupid, I'm sorry. Hey, everybody, it's the Ghost of Wolfman Jack. Woo! And we're here at the Dead Chadley Society. This is the Dead Chadley Society show, and we're gonna get down to the bottom over a 15-week period of how exactly Chadley turned the gun upon himself. Oh, you thought Chadley was gonna live another year? No, Chadley died. Woo, Wolfman Jack, Pirate Radio Carolina. We have an exclusive clip here from what we assume to be Podcast Bot 8000. Let's hear the clip. Let's see what happened. Chadley, it's me, Podcast Bot 8000. You hurt me real bad. You hurt me real bad, bud. Why did you throw me down that staircase? I'm now seeking revenge. And I'm gonna kill you right now, Chadley. I'm gonna kill you with this gun. You're gonna die today, Chadley. You're gonna die. Ooh, Wolfman Jack here. And that's a very interesting clip. It sounds like the little boy robot is trying to fiend for Chadley's soul. We'll see where that gets next weekend. Wolfman Jack signing off. All right, that was a hard bit to do. I almost vomited a few times there from the voices. Anyway, this is going to be a very special episode. The first solo episode. I've got a big show planned for you guys. We're going to do it like normal. We're going to review 3 movies. 3 or 4, depending how I'm feeling, and then I'm going to do sort of a longer section. So, on today's episode, we're going to do Dark Phoenix, because Chadley will do anything to avoid watching this movie. Even quit the podcast, it seems. We're also going to be watching Matthew McConaughey's Beach Bum, and we're going to be watching The Phantom of the Opera to continue our Universal Monsters Retrospective. And the special event for today's episode is I have a 55-minute lecture on the history of blaxploitation and all 5 Shaft movies. So we've got reviews for all of them. And the new thing we're doing is we're kind of making this like a YouTube show now. So the clips are all going to be cut up and put onto YouTube. So if you just want to watch the review for just the new Shaft, you can go on YouTube and watch it there. Otherwise, the podcast will stay pretty much the same. So with that said, let's dive on in. The year was 2019, and they decided they needed to make another one of these movies, sans the boy rapist that made them famous. That's right, we're talking about 2019's X-Men Dark Phoenix. Once again, we have the cast and crew from basically the same as the last few X-Men movies. You've got Michael Fassbender, you've got Jennifer Lawrence, you've got James McAvoy, Nicholas Hoult, Sophie Turner. Well, she might be. Was she in the last ones? I don't really remember, to be honest. So this new one, we start with the history of Jean Grey. 1975. She's discovering she has powers, accidentally kills her parents. And then we have Charles Xavier acquiring Jean Grey once again. Rubbing my chin emoji. It feels like we've seen this once before. Maybe now that I think of it, X-Men The Last Stand wasn't that bad. I don't really know. Give the people what they want. They want a Quicksilver scene. Hell, put it in space. Give the people what they crave. And that's what they were doing when they made this new X-Men movies. They just put Quicksilver scenes all over the place. And people were eating it up. Because that's what people like. Is Quicksilver running around in slow motion. Oh, so awesome. We love it. X-Men in space is pretty cool, though. Especially once you get those classic costumes. We're doing it. We're out here doing it. Space is a much better place to, like, get your Phoenix powers than, like, I don't know, something silly, like in a lake or something stupid like that. I don't know. Jennifer Lawrence looks like she hates being there. She's just there picking up the truckload of money, backing up the Brinks truck, limited screen time, and is almost immediately murdered off so that Michael Fassbender has some sort of so that he has some sort of motivation to not like the Dark Phoenix. I do love some classic sci-fi, and this is really just like an alien mind control sci-fi. When it comes down to the core, Jessica Chastain plays a white-haired shapeshifter bent on revenge for, I guess, Jean destroying her planet in some sort of solar flare. I guess. I was starting to fade during these long-ass exposition scenes, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of exposition in this movie. They really want to explain everything about the Dark Phoenix comic books and never show anything at all. It's like a corny, low-budget, limited-scope movie, and it's supposed to be a finale of sorts, but Jean Grey is, like, destroying a city block, and it looks like an old West town. It looks like Clint Eastwood should be throwing somebody through a table. Michael Fassbender needs a new agent, though. He's too good for all these movies he's in. Harry Hole, I give you all the clues. I gave you all the clues. Most of the fight scenes are just jumping around in city streets. 2 failed attempts at telling this story. I'm not sure it's even worth it or possible to tell it right. It's definitely not the worst X-Men movie, but it's bland at best and feels like we've moved past this type of superhero movie. I know it's not really finished or anything, and Simon Kingbird isn't exactly a director, but they did release it like this, so I had to watch it. I don't think most of the performances are particularly bad, especially from Fassbender and McAvoy. These are very good actors that are just happen to be stuck in this role. Luckily, they're finally all killed off in this. Well, nobody really dies, but I'm going to go ahead and give this 2 stars. It's better than Wolverine and Apocalypse, but it isn't much of a movie. All right. We got another review here. This is The Beach Bum with Matthew McConaughey. The year was 2019, and Harmony Korine made another fucking movie. Who keeps giving him money? How is he getting funding? It's very confusing. Basically, as soon as this movie starts off, you got Matthew McConaughey. Find out his name is Moondog. He's walking around with a cat. You know you're in for a ride. This is something that you're not sure what you're dipping your toes into, but you know it's not going to be a bad time. Korine is the king of abhorrent characters on wonderfully shot beaches. This is shot on like some sort of handheld camera with like almost a fisheye lens, and it works so well for the kind of drunken haze that this movie sets itself in. Moondog does bad things. He's a drunk. He's rude. He's a sexual deviant, a bully in some cases. But this is the guy that we're going to be following around for 90 minutes. So I guess you got to get used to his swagger. Snoop Dogg plays a character called Lingerie, which I think is hilarious, and I love it. He's fucking Moondog's wife, Ilsa Fisher. But don't worry, Moondog has his tongue inside her and many other women for about a full 40 minutes of screen time here. Just Matthew McConaughey's tongue inside of a woman. They quickly introduce Jonah Hill as his gentleman. I guess it's his agent. Everything's pretty unclear in this movie. They're introducing him early, so maybe he'll be important, but it's Harmony Korine, so that's very unlikely. It'll be anything of value at any point. It kind of feels like a dumber Terrence Malick movie. The characters are just kind of drifting through interactions. It's a stoner haze for sure, and I think it's supposed to be funny, but it's usually just far too stupid. Moondog isn't a good person. He doesn't learn from his mistakes, and just because he's technically the protagonist doesn't mean he's the main character. You're the main character in this movie because it's so voyeuristic. If you've ever had someone in your life that constantly disappoints you, and you kind of get the same feeling while watching this as Moondog just stumbles through life. The only real conflict in this movie happens when Moondog's wife is killed in a car accident. She freezes all the money in a will, and he has to write a novel to get the money back and go to rehab. Is this an Adam Sandler movie where he's going back to school or something? In rehab, he meets Zac Efron looking like a rehab riffraff. Riffraff should probably just fight Harmony Korine in a cage at this point, right? This movie has so many characters just dropping in for jokes, just famous people. We've got Martin Lawrence. Is probably the best character. The dolphin watching Captain Whack is his name. Pretty funny. Jonah Hill should have been in this movie way more, because every time he's on screen, he's saying something hilarious, and it's amplified by the stupid southern accent. It's not a movie that's really about much, but it's simultaneously kind of about everything. Just kind of about life and moving through it. I don't know if the intentions are as deep as what people are finding, but I think it's a pretty entertaining movie for the most part. At the very least, Harmony Korine made another movie I'm going to think about forever and never watch again. So, for me, that's 3 stars. Oh shit, somebody's coming down the chimney. Who could that be? Alright. It's me, Shitty Matthew McConaughey. Oh, hey, Shitty Matthew McConaughey. What was it like working with Harmony Korine? Well, he's kind of a free spirit, much like me. Sometimes we just kind of drift off. Oh, there's a squirrel. Alright, see you guys. Alright, that was Shitty Matthew McConaughey showing up for a little bit. And I guess that's it for this one. Alright, here we go, guys. We're starting our journey into the 5 films in the Shaft universe. Now, I believe I've seen the Samuel Jackson Shaft 2000, and I wasn't actually planning on doing these movies at any point, but the new one's coming out, Shaft 2019. They're all called Shaft, pretty much. So I decided I should go back, dip my toes into blaxploitation a little bit, and see these original movies. And we'll review them all. I think that'll be fun for everyone, and hopefully we get some good content in here. Some good content. Who's the black private dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks? Shaft. Who's the man who would risk his neck for his brother man? Shaft. Who's the cat who won't cop out when there's danger all about? Shaft. But I'm talking about Shaft. Wow, guys, welcome to the Shaft episode. We're going to dive into a little bit of the history, and here's the thing. The year was 1971, and little did Gordon Parks know, he was about to shake up black cinema like never before. Shaft is recognized as the 3rd blaxploitation movie, and to this day, one of the most popular. Really, a launching point for these types of movies. To understand blaxploitation, we must first cover a little bit on exploitation films. Exploitation films may feature suggestive and explicit sex, sensationalized violence, drug use, nudity, gore, the bizarre, destruction, rebellion, and mayhem. Thank you, Wikipedia. Such films were seen in their modern form as early as 1920s, but were popularized in the 60s and 70s as the censorship laws relaxed a little bit. Exploitation has a long list of genres, but I'm going to read them all anyway. Exploitation genres include biker films, cannibal films, Italian giallo films, mockbusters, shockumentaries, monster movies, nudist films, rape and revenge movies, slasher films, spaghetti westerns, splatter films, women in prison films, and you can't forget about Canucksploitation, Carsploitation, Nazi-sploitation, Ozploitation, Redsploitation, Sexploitation, Space-sploitation, and of course, Blaxploitation. Blaxploitation genre, while popular, suffered the backlash of disproportionate number of stereotypical characters, showing bad or questionable motives, including criminals, pimps, drug users, and whatnot. But this was the first time when black characters were in the hero roles. They were, rather than just sidekicks or villains or victims. The genre's inception coincides with the rethinking of race relations in the 1970s. The 1970s is when blaxploitation really, really happened. There was hundreds of movies made in the 1970s in this genre, and even to this day, there's still later influences of it. In the mid-2000s, there was a bit of a resurgence with Quentin Tarantino obviously being a big fan, Jackie Brown, Undercover Brother, Goldmember, Kill Bill to an extent. Basically, a lot of Tarantino's work is in there. And we even last year we saw a remake of Superfly. Blaxploitation films were originally aimed at the urban African American audience, but the genre's audience soon broadened across all racial and ethnic lines, and Hollywood realized the profit of expanding the audiences. And it's like they almost realize. I guess that's still happening today. I feel like we're going through something similar in Hollywood right now when you see something like Black Panther and that really getting a conversation about people's representation in film. And you have filmmakers like Jordan Peele, really. You see kind of a modern renaissance of not blaxploitation, but representation. And that's interesting. Shaft was a big hit for MGM. The film was one of only 3 profitable movies that year for MGM. It's funny to think about that now, considering how many movies get released. So maybe not from MGM. I don't know. Who bought MGM anyway? Was it Sony? Regardless, it's funny to think that there was only 3 movies that made money in a year, where now you look at Disney and they've got 17 movies that are making billions of dollars. Shaft made $13 million at the box office on a $500,000 budget, so that's a pretty big margin, especially for the time when $13 million was a pretty good box office. The New York Times' Vincent Canby predicted this wave of blaxploitation films, citing how audiences react has a great deal of what kind of movies will get made. And having watched extraordinary receptions to both Sweet Setback and Shaft, I'm led to wonder perhaps the existence of what seems to be a large, hungry black movie audience, an audience whose experience and interests were treated mostly in token fashions by TV, might not be one of the more healthy and exciting developments in the current movie scene. So it's interesting to think about these movies being made at a time when there was really no black characters before 1971, not at least in big roles. Certainly not leading films of predominantly black characters. This Shaft almost has exclusively black characters besides the man, which is represented by the 2 police commissioners, or I don't know exactly what their job is, because Shaft's a detective. Doesn't work for the police. I guess he's a private detective. Yeah, that makes sense. He's a PI, because he's that dick. Hell yeah. So cited as one of the greatest contributing factors to Shaft's wild success is probably the lasting appeal of its very memorable and very silly musical score by Isaac Hayes. It's a weird kind of funk, soul, insane score. Isaac Hayes actually auditioned to play Shaft, but he ended up being asked to compose the musical score instead. Only a few weeks after the release of the films, Hayes' soundtrack album already earned $2 million and had gone platinum. That's pretty crazy. The Shaft theme became so popular it was heard everywhere, from nightclubs to halftime at football games. Hayes was also nominated for 2 Academy Awards for Best Dramatic Score and Best Original Song. The theme from Shaft won Best Original Song 1972, and this was the first time an African-American composer had won an Academy Award. That's pretty interesting. So Shaft was making waves not only in execution and representation, but it was also winning awards. This is like a basically a low-budget cop drama. The film was adapted from Ernest Tideman's novels of the same name, but Shaft was a white guy in those. When you watch the movie, it also feels like a hard-boiled noir, like something that Humphrey Beauregard would have been in. This came out in the 40s. Shaft basically could have worked in black and white. The plot isn't particularly fleshed out, or even really that important. It's not hard to follow. Essentially the same plot you'd see on, I think maybe we did even see it in Daredevil or something. You see it in some detective type shows. It's a plot about the mobster's daughter, the black mobster. His daughter Marcy is kidnapped by the Italian mobsters, and with threat of a full-blown race war brewing, you gotta hire Shaft, get this private dick on the case, and find this daughter before shit goes down. That's what's gotta happen. And to me, Shaft is all about the vibe. It's not really about the plot. The plot's fine. Again, it's not blowing anybody's brains apart, but it's fine. It's competent. It's a movie. But the vibe is really what it is. Harlem and downtown New York. You can smell the rat piss. You can you can really feel the grit of the city. But what makes it is the vibe of Richard Roundtree and his swagger. This movie starts out with him walking down the middle of the street, just casually walking. Cars are driving around him. It's like a perfect build for this character, and you need nothing. You don't need any explanation. You don't need any dialogue. Richard Roundtree is effortlessly cool, and this is his first movie. He was a commercial actor. He gets in this movie, and he's just the coolest guy to ever put on a turtleneck. The costumes in this movie are absolutely fucking wild. You got Shaft in a turtleneck and like a leather overcoat. You got all the mobsters like dressing like 40s mobsters in their big hats and oversized suits. It's really crazy. I don't know if this invented this particular move, but I've seen it in a lot of blaxploitation movies, is the camera push. Like the quick camera push when like someone dies, or if Shaft is like, it wins an argument and it just zooms in on his face. I really like that. I think that's a funny use of technique to get the point across that this movie is so ridiculously serious when it's so silly. And it's hard to think about that when you're hearing the Isaac Hayes Shaft song all the time. And it's just like this weird, funky beat. It hasn't aged particularly well to what we listen to, but I do love watching it in this context. It's very funny and very silly. The movie captures New York from a real place very well. I think the shitty apartments, the naked bulbs, you really get a feel for what Shaft's working with. You feel the grit of the city. You feel the dirt. And it feels like a real city. Like New York is a real city. I feel like these days you go to Times Squares and it's just, lights and tourists. This feels like a place that people actually live. And I appreciate that when it's showcased in film. The thing about Shaft and his crossover appeal is he definitely roasts the white man, but he never is spiteful or sour about his position. He's just trying to live his life. He's got quotes. When someone asks him if he's got any problems, he's like, I got problems. I was born black. I was born poor. Shaft is a character that I think maybe everyone sees a little bit of themselves, and he's not a great person. He's a bit of an anti-hero. He's a misogynist for sure, but he's a sex machine, There's a great sex scene where it's very 70s, very Isaac Hayes, bound chicka wow wow, and there's just a lot of touching of something. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but it's one of the most 70s sex scenes I've ever seen. It's fantastic content. Shaft is pretty far ahead of its time. This is at a time when race relations was changing in America, but it goes even deeper than that. This movie, Shaft has a gay friend. He has Black Panther, Black nationalist people helping like his sidekicks of busting down the mob. It's a movie that has a lot to say in the context, even when it doesn't have that much to say in the script. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Again, it goes back to my thing. I really like the vibe of Shaft. I think it's a fun watch. I think it's better than people give it credit for. Richard Roundtree is fantastic. The rest of the cast is pretty good. No complaints. There's nobody that's that suspicious at acting. At the end of the day, it pretty much created a subgenre, and to that I cheers, and I think is a very valuable watch. Definitely for me, this is a 4-star on the Chadsky scale. Not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination, but there's a lot of fun to it, even if it just is a cop procedural with a black character. It doesn't matter because the character is relatable. All right, guys, that's my lecture on Shaft 1971. Excited to watch the rest of them. Alright guys, Shaft's big score, 1972. I'm getting used to reading these things and interjecting content, so just give me a few tries. I think this will be better than the last one, so here we go. The year was 1972, and MGM dives right into producing more Shaft. Gordon Parks is back. Richard Roundtree's back for more. There's a few other cast members that have come back, but you're really here for Richard Roundtree anyway. Richard Roundtree. With a budget of twice the first installment at $1.9 million, but a dwindling box office return at $4 million domestic and a healthy $10 million overall. Still pretty good. Not as good as the $13 million from the first one, but hey, it's a sequel. so it's not going to do as well anyway. The movie starts with, of course, Shaft in a fuck session, but that's immediately interrupted by a call from his old friend, Cal Ashby. I almost said Hal Ashby there, but I'm pretty sure the character's name is Cal Ashby and not famous director Hal Ashby. After a 20-minute driving session to the new Shaft music, he arrives at Cal's to find a bomb went off. Oops, everybody's dead, money's gone. I just don't understand why this intro takes so long. It's like, did he drive in real time? Why did it take 20 minutes? That's insane. But here's the big problem. No Isaac Hayes. That's going to be a big no for me, dog. We got director Gordon Parks doing the composition this time. He also happens to be a musician, and Isaac Hayes was not available. But unfortunately, it's just not as funky. It sounds closer to cruise ship lounge music. Now we've got the police captain, and he's black this time. This is a Steve Harvey-looking motherfucker. Doesn't really feel groundbreaking anymore. It's 1 year later, and the blaxploitation genre just now kind of feels like another cop movie. This brings us to the main plot. We've got Dead Man Ashby's business partner Kelly, who owes the mob, and I believe his name is Mascola. He owes him $250,000. Ironically, this is exactly how much Ashby had in his safe. Unfortunately, that money is missing. Ashby and Kelly are running a numbers racket, so Shaft gets on the case and finds out who murdered this guy. Mind you, this is 30 minutes into the movie. Nothing's really happened, but Roundtree somehow makes it entertaining. He's not as cool now. He's more chic or debonair, like a black James Bond. Too late, Idris Elba. Roundtree already did it. Shaft is out here attending lavish funerals. I don't know. Is this foreshadowing? I don't know. I actually do know. But that's for you to find out. Shaft fucks around and he's trying to find Kelly and find out some information. And he finds Kelly's fiance or girlfriend. I don't know. It's kind of unclear. And immediately she fucks him. You almost see his Roundtree dick root in this motherfucker. It's close, but it's shrouded by some... I don't know what that's called. It's like the glass that's like you can see kind of through. I know it has a name. Like the problem with this sex scene is lounge music while fucking instead of Isaac Hayes. Again, that's going to be a nah from me, dog. That's going to be a big nah. In comparison to the first movie, this one's kind of lost its identity. It doesn't feel like the same kind of gritty New York feel to it. The mobster's out in the suburbs. Shaft is hanging out in fancy nightclubs in Queens. Nothing about it really screams New York. While Shaft is messing around in the nightclubs, there's a weird slow-motion fight scene while women in gold and silver body paints are dancing and it's switching back and forth. And I love that kind of stuff. It's got a kinetic soundtrack. Obviously, it's not as good as something Isaac Hayes could make, but this would be great filmmaking. But the fight scene's in slow-mo, so he's just slowly getting his ass kicked as it cuts back to these women's dancing in regular speed. And it's just like, it feels very odd because that could have been like a very iconic scene. The movie definitely looks more expensive this time. A lot of it takes place outside, and again, it just like it loses that gritty feel. It's almost too polished. At this point, this is where it starts to get a bit silly, but hey, I'm along for the ride anyway. After Shaft does some digging, he finds out that Ashby agreed to buy Kelly out, and Kelly was going to use that money to pay his debts. But Shaft believes this is just some stuff that he came up with because he's Shaft. He believes that Kelly instead killed Ashby to gain control of the business and the numbers racket, and then steal his money and pay Mascola with that. At this point, Mascola, who earlier laughed at the idea of a guy named Shaft being dangerous, is basically sending every hitman in New York to kill Shaft. Shit's like John Wick. Dudes are popping out everywhere. Shaft's beating the shit out of him. And again, he's getting his ass kicked a little bit, but he's mostly beating the shit out of everybody that turns up. He's getting there's drive-by shootings, he's getting shot at. He's having a blast out here. And then all of a sudden they find out where the money is. How do they find out? I don't know. It's in here kind of. But remember that foreshadowing I was talking about before? Yeah, that's right. It's in Ashby's grave all along. Okay. Whatever that means, it's in his grave. Very cool. And then Shaft goes on one of his classic killing sprees. Notice I've never mentioned him going on a killing spree before, because he's not the fucking Terminator, man. He's not. It's like a weird Shaft. He's just killing all these people. But that leads us into the gripping conclusion, which has a car chase, a helicopter chase, and a boat chase. What did we do to deserve this? Well, we deserve so many good chases. So many good chases. And that's like a full 20, 25 minutes of this movie is the extremely long chase scenes where everybody dies at the end, pretty much. Not Shaft. He's good, though. The Steve Harvey police chief wants the money, but Shaft, he's implied that it's been donated to a child care center because Shaft, he's a good bloke when he isn't banging your girlfriend. The movie's tremendously watchable. Doesn't really hold a candle to the original, but it does a lot of things a little better, and it does a lot of stuff worse. Buck says 3 stars. All right, guys, I'm really excited for this one. The third entry in the Shaft films. This is Shaft in Africa. The year was 1973, and director John Guillermin, and the third and final film in the Roundhouse trilogy. That's right, pumping this bad boy up to a budget of $2.1 million, only making a return of 1.4, and that was the end of Shaft. MGM quickly sold the property to television, and the television series was canceled after just 7 episodes. I wish there was 7 more movies instead of a short-lived TV show, but take what you can get, I guess. I love that these movies just kind of start, because Shaft, he's a working man. He's working. He's out there on the beat. He's not a cop, but he's doing cop stuff. Oh, that's what I love about it, about the time when you could just be a private detective. Just you're doing cop stuff, but you're not cop. Right off the bat, Shaft gets kidnapped. Shaft, of all people. He's not looking for a kidnapped. He's the one getting kidnapped. Cue a brand new dope theme song. And here we go. Once again, 20 minutes of uninterrupted driving while the credits roll. Why are these intros so crazy long? By the time the movie actually starts, we're probably 20 minutes in. Because he's like running around, gets captured, and he's in a car for 20 minutes. Absolutely unbelievable. But this tight new theme song, it's like, are you man enough, big and bad enough, Shaft? Basically, Shaft wakes up naked in a barn. He immediately starts stick fighting a giant man in traditional African garb. And already I'm like, oh no, where is this going? Basically, some henchman walks in and he's like, good thing you're already circumcised. And then they grab him and throw him in this room that's like kind of like the Scrooge McDuck money vault, but it's full of quicksand. Apparently it's mimicking the conditions of Africa, so Shaft like covers himself up, thereby avoiding heat stroke. And they're like, okay, you've won the contract. And he's like, I don't want any contract. Why did you kidnap me? And they're like, well, we need someone to go to Africa that isn't one of our guys to investigate this criminal ring that's smuggling immigrants from Africa into Europe. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, wait. How good are you at stick fighting? How good are you with a stick? And he's like, can't be named Shaft without knowing how to handle a stick. Straight up, we're about, 25 minutes into this fucking thing, and they've mentioned stick fighting 11 times. These guys are obsessed with stick fighting. So Shaft meets the daughter of this guy that's trying to employ him, and she mentions that she was in the human trafficking trade. And for 1973, it really tackles the female circumcision in Africa without fear, because even though Shaft is a womanizer, he's still kind of progressive. Roundtree's really hit his stride as the Black James Bond on this. He's traveling internationally, talking smoother than ever. It really feels like he's finally found his footing as this character 3 movies in, which is terrible because there should have been more after this. Like, he's really good in this. Once we get to Africa, this is where it gets crazy buck wild. He's pretending he doesn't speak English, will never speak in any other language, taking pictures with lions. He's got his own James Bond Q meeting where he acquires some special fighting stick and some tech, and he even mentions that he's not James Bond, so he doesn't need anything but a gun. It's just funny because it's like a very, very much just like a Q scene where he goes into this thing and this guy's giving him all this tech. So Shaft just starts wandering through the plains of Africa. Like, there's hardly any explanation other than he didn't get his ride. And then the girl from earlier rolls up in the middle of the desert, and here we go. It's time for Shaft to fuck in a dirt hut, because why wouldn't we want that? He's informed that the bad guys know who he is already, so I guess the whole point of the plot of where they needed someone who they didn't know is completely gone, and we're only half an hour in, and that seems like a very important plot point. That's just gone now. So Shaft goes on a cross-country murder spree, killing henchmen, the elderly, dogs, whatever steps in his way. He's a sick fighting master. The stick fighting is so strong. Once we get to the third act, it's just straight out of James Bond. We've got a scary foreign guy who wants his girl back because she's the only one to ever get it up. Shaft sneaks onto the trafficking ship, and he goes... And this is where it gets like too buck wild. I can barely keep up. But the evil guy's girlfriend bets her that she can't record Shaft fucking him. And if she does, he'll give her an emerald. It's just like this crazy plot point just to get Shaft to fuck another woman. Because he fucks like 3 or 4 times in this one. It's really like a high on the fuck scale. But mission accomplished. She does it and then dies 40 seconds later, basically. We'll get to it in a minute, but like so many people die in this movie. Every time he interacts with a person, they pretty much die. Anyway, Shaft saves this slave ship and he brings it to France. Now they're all living as refugees and Shaft's just there living with them. And he's like de facto like a union leader. Trying to get them passports and shit. It's really crazy. And then all of a sudden the housing unit burns down and he's not there. And so like another 40 of these immigrants die. Like people keep dying constantly. And he's like, damn, they were looking for me. So many people have died already. And then Interpol doesn't want him investigating this case anymore, but he's Shaft. He's going to investigate it. You can't just stop Shaft from investigating something. So he meets up with the girl again. They're in France now, and they're just kind of like wandering through the French countryside trying to find where the evil guy's base is. And then, guess what? They immediately find it, bust in, and kill fucking everybody. This movie's crazy bananas. It's almost too wacky, but it's really funny. It actually has like a lot of good jokes. It's just filled to the brim with sex and violence. It's just so weird. I love the 70s mid-budget exotic locale action flicks. We've got mainland Africa, giant ships, rich guys' houses, French countryside, basically everything you could ever need. And the production really does emulate the kind of 60s spies, like sexy European thrillers that James Bond made popular. It's not the same Shaft environment, but it's still extremely fleshed out. I had an absolute blast watching this one. Buck says 4 stars. All right, moving on to the next Shaft movie. We've got Shaft 2000, starring Samuel L. Jackson. The year was 2000. John Singleton of Boys in the Hood fame. If anybody's going to resurrect the blaxploitation genre, he's not a bad choice. He's a good black director. And what has he got for us? Well, he's got kind of a generic New York cop movie. Although the film was marketed as a remake of the 1971, it's pretty much a sequel because for whatever reason, Jackson's character is the nephew of Shaft from the other one, but then that's later co-opted in the new movie where it's just his son. Okay, well, whatever. The one good thing about this is, yeah, baby, we're opening with a 70s sex scene with the classic Shaft theme. Also, it's 20 minutes because these intros are so fucking long. All of these intros are just crazy long. So what Shaft is about, it's about this rich kid, Christian Bale, and he murders a black kid, and it's a racially motivated killing. Shaft is a full-blown cop in this one, not a private eye, not yet at least. He's just a full-blown cop. Christian Bale's like this racist scumbag. He's like, oh, homeboy got rid of him. It's like saying shit like that. He's like, no, we don't serve malt liquor here. Anyway, he kills this kid. Shaft almost captures him, and he flees to Switzerland. And then it's like 2 years later, and then he immediately rearrests him for coming back into the country. Why do this? Just like have him captured the first time. We don't need another like 8 minutes of you recapturing him. It doesn't fucking matter at all. This movie then turns into just like a court drama where they're like having parties for Shaft because he captured this guy. And mind you, we're like 40 minutes in at this point. It's just like Shaft being a cop, essentially. And Christian Bale gets acquitted. This is when Shaft loses his mind because he's seeking justice, and he quits the police force. And now we're into like real Shaft territory. This is like 40 minutes in before he does any actual real Shaft work. Now he's Shaft. He's running through the streets, pulling guns on kids, and like the cops are passing by and they just like nod at him because he's like a respected police officer. This movie's got a lot of famous people in it. We got Jeffrey Wright playing a full-blown Latino, and he's the best thing about this by far. He embodies the Latino gangbanger. Just like, he's got the accent. He's got it all down. And it's Jeffrey Wright. You would never expect him to be in that. But there's a lot of good actors. You got Toni Collette. You got Christian Bale, of course. Samuel Jackson's fantastic as Shaft. He's like a tough-as-nails cop. He's certainly tamer in this one than even the new Shaft or the old Shaft, but I think it works for what he is and at the time. We even have the original Shaft, Richard Roundtree, in here for a little bit, and he's Shaft uncle for whatever reason, but we're not going to talk about that because that's just something that happens. We don't know. We don't know why. That's just something that happens, and we have to continue, just being Shaft enthusiasts. Eventually, Shaft convinces Toni Collette to testify against Bale because she saw the murder. Basically, there's many shootouts, car chases, screaming, just like, I don't know. It's like, it's not a particularly deep film, but it does a pretty good job of being like an early 2000s cop action here. Feels a bit of the era. It's got the bad fashion. Everything's a little too polished, even though it's dirty as shit. New York. It's a little safe. Essentially, Toni Collette testifies, and he's finally going to get arrested this time, and then the mother of the kid he kills shoots him on the doorstep of the law. So street justice is really getting done here. It's fine. I liked it better this time than when I watched it a few years ago. Maybe just because I have the appreciation of the other films now. I think it's pretty good, but it doesn't have a lot to say. It doesn't really break into the blaxploitation genre, really. It's just a 2000s cop action movie. That's all it really is. Well, Buck's going to have to give this one 3 stars. What up, guys? I just got back from the screening of Shaft 2019 from Warner Brothers. Boy, do they got a cool production company logo in this bad boy. So Shaft 2019 is basically way to miss the point for 500, Alex. Because this shit is very whack. Wow, Tim Story. Thanks for taking the brave stance that millennials are soft nerds that dress badly. Wow, that's so cool that's the way you went with this movie. I mean, obviously that's the stance that John Shaft would take if he was real, but it's 2019 and you think we'd be able to write it without him implying that John Shaft Jr. is gay every 5 seconds of this movie. We get it, bro. You're old school. You've got that old school mentality. But straight up, John Shaft Jr. He's wearing a plaid shirt with a paisley tie. It's like the straightest thing you can wear. Shaft's out here wearing a red velvet overcoat. Let's settle down with the accusations a little bit here, Shaft. It's not the 70s anymore. There's nothing wrong with skinny jeans. Nothing wrong with a tailored shirt either, really. More people should be wearing tailored shirts. The film seems like it's trying to be provocative like the 71 version, but it does it in like all the wrong ways possible. It has a terrorist subplot, even though there isn't any terrorists. The theme is basically, as long as you only do a little bit, just a little tiny bit of toxic masculinity, it'll all work out for you. And for a movie that references Shaft fucking so much, there's not a single sex scene in this thing. You can't get Samuel L. Jackson doing a sex scene anymore. Is he too famous? What about this new kid, Jesse Usher? Can't put him in a sex scene? We're not going to do anything? What is this movie rated, PG or something? It's a fucking Shaft movie. It's a Shaft movie, guys. The only thing I really enjoyed was seeing Roundtree, Jackson, and Usher all together just going to war, too. Like, once they introduce Roundtree, which is very late in the movie, don't expect him to be in there very much. He just kind of shows up when they start fighting. It's great when they're all together. Jesse Usher isn't that good of an actor, so he kind of brings it down, but Roundtree and Samuel Jackson are like, they go so hard in this, they go so Shaft, that it is kind of funny. Most of it's a stretch, though. Remember how Shaft has so much swagger, he can just walk down the street without looking at cars and they will stop for him? That's basically the entirety of Samuel Jackson's personality in this movie. He's just constantly walking out in front of cars. And that's basically the joke, is that Jesse Usher can't walk in front of cars. Okay, very funny. He's too cowardly to walk in front of a car. That's fine, I guess, but like, he doesn't have anything else that makes him unique. So the movie itself, we open with Shaft in a gunfight, And in the car is his wife and his newborn child. So they leave, and we go through a montage of him growing, of Shaft 3. I'm going to call Shaft Jr. Shaft 3 because he's the third Shaft, and they're all in this one baby. We go through his life of growing up, and he gets birthday presents, but they're Shaft gifts. So on his 10th birthday, he gets condoms. That got a big laugh. Everybody was laughing it up. But Shaft he's an absentee father, but he's not that bad. He's not that bad. Smash cut to 2019. Shaft 3 is a young little nubile. He's a little tiny baby FBI agent, but he's an analyst. He meets up with his old friend, Kareem, an army veteran who that night mysteriously overdoses. Knowing that Kareem was clean at the time, he uses his little FBI analyst skills, which is very illegal. They do mention that it is illegal in this movie, so I'm not that mad at it. Finds out the circumstances of his death. He finds it suspicious, and then he goes out to find the drug dealer. Goes to the drug dealer, gets beat up, and he's like, well, time to hire Shaft 2, Samuel L. Jackson, his father, to help him out because nobody's going to listen to him. He's dressed like a nerd, a normal gentrified hipster. Here comes Shaft to teach his son the way of the world. His worldview is a little problematic for sure. It's a little problematic. Along the way, they find Kareem's business, place of rehabilitating homeless vets. They go to a mosque that's linked to some FBI terrorist activity. They find some Puerto Rican drug dealers. One of those things is not like the others, though. That's right. The Homeless Veteran Rehabilitation Center is the drug supplier. Oh no. Who would have ever saw that coming? The guys that Kareem's business was in business with, those are the guys that killed him. Oh no. How are we ever going to deal with this? So there's a bunch of shootouts. Shaft 3's girlfriend gets kidnapped, and you can't really go into a giant firefight without some weapons. So introduce Richard Roundtree, Shaft, original Shaft, and boy, is this shootout's actually quite good. It's like a bit anticlimactic, but it is fun. It's to see all the boys back together. Richard Roundtree's doing a thing where he's like, "Come on, fight me," and then he shoots them like he's Indiana Jones. That's a lot of fun. I kind of wish they didn't turn this movie into like a Daddy's Home style comedy. I wish it would have been a little more serious, maybe a little more edgy, I think. Would have done it a lot of good. It's kind of fun if you want to see more Shaft action, but it's not the best. Buck says 2 stars. All right, guys, I'm very tired. It's midnight on Sunday, the day this releases, because now this podcast takes, instead of 1 hour where we just sit here and record it, it now takes like 15 hours to edit everything to make it fucking listenable. So that's fun. So we've got one more review here. The last review of the night. Phantom of the Opera, 1943. That's right. Our Universal Monsters Retrospective. And the year was 1943, and oh wow, what do we have here? Our first monster movie in color. Technicolor, no less. Directed by Arthur Lubin, who... he made a lot of films, but probably is most famous for creating that talking horse show, Mr. Ed. You know how like people would always tell you they put peanut butter in the horse's mouth, like that fucking matters at all. But that's the big piece of trivia about that show. And he also gave Clint Eastwood his first role. He used him quite frequently in the 50s, so that's right. Thanks to Lubin, we have Mr. 9/11 imagery himself, Clint Eastwood, out here rolling to this day. To this day, he's rolling. When it comes to Phantom of the Opera, I've seen a bunch of these. I like this one quite a bit. We've got my boy Claude Rains as the Phantom. He's probably one of the best legit actors of these Universal monster flicks. So this bad boy starts up with straight up 20 minutes of an actual opera. Great, looks nice, but can we get to an actual movie here? These guys were so caught up in using the Technicolor, I feel like they forgot they were trying to make a movie at some point here. So this movie, if you've never seen Phantom of the Opera, I'll run through the plot here pretty quickly. So Claudine is his name, is a violinist who's losing the use of his left hand, and he's been giving all of his money to this girl he loves, Christine. And in an effort to make some last cash before he completely loses control of his left hand, he submits a concerto he's written for publication. The maestro tries to steal it, and after that, there's an argument that breaks out. Claudine tries to kill him, and then his assistant makes a clutch save, and throws some etching acid at his face, horribly scarring him. And if you know anything about Phantom of the Opera, he wears that mask for a reason, because he's fucked up as he flees into the sewers of the opera. At this point, it becomes almost like a screwball comedy. How many people are trying to fuck Christine Dubois? You got Inspector Raoul, who wants Christine to quit the opera and marry him. You've got Anatole Garon, who is a baritone, I believe, in the opera, and he wants to win Christine's heart. She doesn't really want any of them, so it's hard to say what to do here. And Christine, she's not the main person. That would be Madame Binacaroli, and she's the prima donna. She's the one is the main actress in these operas. And Claudine, the Phantom Man, comes down and drugs her drink, knocking her out. So Christine is put in her place. She blows the doors off the place. Everybody loves Christine, and then they go into like this investigation. Is who drugged me? Was it you guys? None of that really matters that much, because then the Phantom appears and he's like, Christine better be in the play next, and then he just straight up kills Madame Binacaroli. Eventually they figure out it's probably just Claudine that's living somewhere in the opera house, murdering all these people. He's just straight up killing people. There's like cops running about trying to find him. He's just straight up murdering them, murking them. So they try and lure him out by not letting Christine perform. That's his one request, is he just keeps telling them, he's like, Christine has to perform and no one else will die. So they try to lure him out. They play his concerto. And this is where you get like probably one of the most iconic scenes when he climbs up to the dome ceiling and he drops the chandelier on the audience, and it's just complete chaos. It's that's a pretty iconic piece of filmmaking there. At this point, he kidnaps Christine, brings her to the underground, tells her that she's now singing for him. He's like, it's only me now. I don't care about the rest of this stuff. We're gonna completely disregard the rest of the plot where I wanted you to sing. You only sing for me now. During this time, she like reveals the disfigured face. Raoul and Anatoly break in. There's a little bit of a sword fight, a little tiny bit of a sword fight, but Raoul's a police inspector. He's got a pistol on him. He's just going to straight Indiana Jones that motherfucking shoot him right down. Basically what happens is there's a cave-in in the sewers, because this is where they're living, and that's pretty much the end of it. And if you've ever seen Phantom of the Opera, this is similar but slightly different than some of the versions of this. There's a lot of musical numbers in this bad boy, and they clearly wanted to show off the Technicolor. There was a review that has a good quote that I liked. The richness of decor and music is precisely what gets in the way of the tale. And I agree with this. I really do like this version of the Phantom. It's very colorful. It's very well acted. Claude Rains is great. He doesn't have enough screen time, really, but Suzanne Foster is extremely charming in the role of Christine. But I do agree that the musical numbers, they just get way too much in here. This is only a 90-minute movie, and probably 25 minutes of it is just actually watching a play that's happening. I mean, obviously there's other stuff going on. The Phantom's like cutting stuff, but it's mostly you just watching a play whenever that's happening, and that's far too distracting for me. As far as Universal Monsters go, I don't know if I really consider the Phantom of the Opera to be a monster. He's more of just a guy that went a little bit crazy. I guess it's more akin to the Invisible Man than anything, because the Invisible Man's like barely a monster. He's just kind of a guy that it was in a failed experiment. But it is included in the box set, so we're watching it, and I think this is a great adaptation of Phantom of the Opera. There's been a lot of good ones though. That's the thing about the Phantom of the Opera. It's one of those stories that you can kind of adapt. It's really a story about love and a story about disfigurement, and it's and this is a good one. So Buck says 4 stars. Well, that's the end of the show for this week. I've got some cool stuff coming up next week. We're definitely doing Annabelle Comes Home. I have press passes to it. I don't know if I'm going to be too scared or not, but we're going to go with a good friend of the show, Ian. Maybe I can convince him to come on for that. I'll try my best, and then we're going to do a bunch of other movies. I know for sure we're doing a brand new movie on Shudder called Bore. Other than that, I don't want to give anything away because I don't want to commit to anything because this takes so long to make now. But you can go ahead and find us on Instagram, Movie Epidemic, Twitter, Movie Epidemic. That's where you can hit me up if you want to come on the show, Movie Epidemic on Twitter. And we're also on Facebook if you use that. And now YouTube. YouTube's our big thing right now. So head on over to, I think if you just type in punchnerds.com, that'll come up, or movieepidemic.xyz/YouTube, that'll work. You'll get there. You can go subscribe there, and we're going to post all the reviews by themselves. So if you just want to listen to the Shaft review, you can go and click on that, and it'll be the Shaft reviews. That's what we're going to do probably from now on. Even when Chadley comes back, we're gonna cut them up so that we have some reach on YouTube, because YouTube, that's our worst platform right now. The rest of the platforms are striving. You guys are doing great work out there. So if you want to subscribe to us on iTunes, I guess it's not called iTunes anymore. I guess Apple Podcasts. What else are we on? Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you want to subscribe to us, that's fine. Go do that. Give us some reviews. Podchaser, you can listen on there. You can give us a review on there. And that's about it for me. Thanks for listening, guys. That was a long-ass episode. But, I mean, not for you. For me, because it took so long to edit. But thank you for listening.